Hello everyone, I'm Paul Larson, CEO of Western CPE. I'm here in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Tropicana. Behind me you see the pool, you might hear a helicopter fly overhead. We gather here every fall and bring together our best tax instructors to exchange ideas on new tax changes during the year in preparation for our fall federal tax updates. This evening I'm here with Chuck Borek. He has his own firm in Baltimore. Chuck is a CPA, has an MBA, and is also an attorney. Chuck, like me with a PhD, I sense you're educated beyond your intelligence, but I thank you for coming tonight. And I want to personally pose to you the question about Nexus, because as a business owner and not a tax expert, it scares me to death that I'm going to have to be paying taxes all over the country. Can you tell me some about this Nexus?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm glad to be here, Paul. And let me tell you about Nexus. Nexus is something you should be concerned about. It shouldn't necessarily scare you to death, and we can give you some information that will help you sleep better at night. But Nexus is an important issue. Nexus is what allows a state to impose tax, state tax, on a business. Now, state tax comes in all forms. We have income tax, we have state sales tax, we have state property tax, and a sufficient connection between the business and the state is required in order for any of those types of taxes to be imposed. And that's what we call Nexus. Now, unfortunately, the Nexus rules are very nebulous and somewhat complex, and different rules apply to different types of taxes, and that's why I call it Nexus Perplexus. It really is a patchwork quilt of different rules, and of course the rules vary from state to state. So it's very important that a business that has any activity in a state get a good handle on whether or not Nexus exists and whether or not they have a state tax filing obligation in that state.
Well, I got to admit, I got a severe case of this Nexus Perplexus, and I've heard some other business people say, if you don't have a physical presence in the state, then you're not on the hook. Is that true?
Well, yes and no. That's one of the tests. Several years ago, there were a couple of very important Supreme Court cases that decided that a physical presence was necessary to have Nexus in order for a state to impose a sales tax withholding obligation. Now, although some states read those decisions to require a physical presence for any type of tax imposition, many states are now reading those decisions very narrowly and have concluded that the physical presence test only applies to sales tax obligations. And many states have now expanded their notion of Nexus and are imposing income taxes, for example, when there is what we refer to as an economic presence. And that might be merely using a trademark in the state or anything which purposefully directs economic activity to that state. That may in fact be considered to be economic nexus, and the state may assert that that business owes state tax to that particular state because of the economic nexus.
Now, it sounds like Amazon is the tip of this spear, and they've got a lot of headlines. What's going on with them that relates to the rest of us?
What we call the Amazon laws have become very controversial. New York State was the first state to pass a statute that tried to capture companies like Amazon that make sales via the internet. They tried to capture their sales for sales tax purposes using this physical presence idea. The notion is that if you have internet sales and your website contains click-through buttons that go to merchants in that particular state, those merchants in the state establish a sufficient nexus between the internet seller and the state. And so New York State passed a statute, for example, that requires Amazon to collect sales tax from New York residents because of these click-through physical presence connections. About a half a dozen other states have passed similar laws, and they've had varying degrees of success. Earlier this year, a federal court ruled that the Colorado law was unconstitutional. So it's yet to be seen exactly how these laws will play out, whether we'll get a Supreme Court decision at some point or federal appellate decisions. At this point, things are pretty much up in the air with respect to those Amazon laws.
Chuck, thanks for joining us here. Look forward to your suggestions and your insights in terms of tax changes this year. We do have a broad offering of federal tax updates this fall, whether it's live seminars, self-study courses, or webcasts. And in California, we have a special integrated California and federal tax update. Hope to see you.